Okay, so if you're watching this, you should have already read The Reason College Costs More Than You Think. And if you look in your textbook on page 36, there is an example summary. This is from chapter 3, and it summarizes right here the text without adding any analysis, any of those I think statements. And one of the things that textbooks do that I know that I was guilty of not paying attention to when I was a student is these sort of ancillary little phrases. Like it explains what's going on. The summary begins with a signal phrase stating the author's name and credentials and the title of the text being summarized. The summary includes only the main ideas in the summaries and in the summary writer's own words. A good example of this that you see is, the synopsis that's given like on Netflix. I almost said a DVD cover, but I don't know if people really, I see them for sale, but I don't know, they're just not as common. But if you pay attention to, like, if you're watching television and you put it on the guide, typically there's a pretty good summary, and it's not anything that's going to reveal too many plot points. So one of the things that this is doing, besides just summarizing, is it introduces the text. It doesn't start in the article. I cannot stress to you how many times I'll go into a classroom and there will be papers from a previous class, or maybe something that was printed out and left in the tray of the printer, and it'll be all nice and pretty and MLA formatted, and the very first sentence is, I think that the author meant, and that's a big mistake. Unless your teacher is directly giving you those instructions, that's really not the way you should be approached. You should always reference what that article is and who the author is. And even if it's not this lengthy of a summary, perhaps your assignment wants you to focus more on analysis. Maybe you just say, in The Reason College Costs More Than You Think, John Marcus reports on the reasons that college is so expensive, being that the amount of time that students stay in school. You could stop there and go into an analysis part. So your textbook goes over how to respond. So there's a few different ways, just sort of tried and true. You can respond to explicitly if you're responding to what a text says. Now, you can agree or disagree with the author's argument, but really what you want to focus on here is, if you do use that phrasing, you want to say, I agree that the reasons that are given in the analysis, or in the, so you're deconstructing what the text says. You're saying what's effective, what's not effective, what is stated that works. Are there good points? So don't let that mislead you, this agree or disagree. It's not just as simple as I agree or I disagree with the author. Do you think John Marcus made some good points? Have you ever thought about he doesn't address tuition, he doesn't address student fees, he doesn't address the cost of textbooks. He simply focuses only on the fact that college is costing so much more because it's taking longer. And that is all. The other thing that you might want to consider is what is left out, because sometimes there may be something that's glaring. I can't think of anything in this instance, but sometimes it's not what the text says, it's what it doesn't say. So the example is still from the same essay, and this one is examining the reasons. It's true that one reason college costs so much more is that students take longer than 4 years to finish their degree, but John Marcus's argument in The Reason College Costs More Than You Think is flawed in several ways. And then this writer goes on to say what is stated or what is left out and what this person thinks is effective or ineffective as is the case here. On page 38, if you're focusing on the way the text is written. So this may be more relevant with the essay that you read next, which is called Her Blind Spot About Guns, because a lot of times when you focus on the way something is written, you're discussing the writer's stance or their word choice, their tone. Do they reach their audience? And the reason I mentioned the article that's coming up is because it is a controversial topic, right? So even though people might disagree with the John Marcus article, they're probably not going to get upset. So it's a lot harder to present an argument when it's something that half of the people are already going to possibly disagree with from the beginning. So in this example, it says, in The Reason College Costs More Than You Think, Time magazine writer John Marcus argues that although several factors contribute to high college costs, the main one is how long it takes students to graduate. Marcus introduces this topic by briefly profiling a student who is in his 5th year of school. So he goes and talks about the rhetorical appeal that he uses by giving first-person accounts, how he cites experts and data, and his use of quotes and support. So that's another way, not just how the author sounds about their topic, but also how they support it, how they build a certain amount of credibility. Sometimes discussing how or the way a text is written with what the text is saying, it can kind of blur. I know for me, I tend to talk about those together when I write, and I think that's okay. The last one that you see, and this is probably the most common, is the reflective piece. Sometimes assignments will ask you to do this at the end, almost as a function of a conclusion. And the papers that I mentioned earlier that I tend to find left behind in a classroom, usually it's this, where a student is responding to what a text says by reflecting on it. And we always want you to make those personal connections to a text, but with the caveat that you can thoroughly examine and analyze something. So how does it affect you personally? This comes more into play with perhaps literature that you might read. So the reflective piece is always good. I don't want to discourage you from that, but I do want you to realize that a lot of times this is what in student writing is used when the student, there's no nice way to say this, has not read the assignment. So it has that, well, I think, and he or she just kind of goes off and can really write a narrative about their opinion on why college costs so much. So if you think about this, if this were a read and respond essay and you knew that the reading assignment was The Reason College Costs More Than You Think, and you knew that it was published in Time Magazine or Business Insider, you could probably put together a nice reflective piece where you talked about just the cost of college. I would encourage you to read the example that's given, because this example is a personal reflection, but he or she clearly connects the thought process back to the original article. John Marcus's Why College Costs More Than You Think made me think hard about my own educational plans, because I'm working to pay for as much of my education as I can. I'm taking a full load of courses so I can graduate in 4 years. And then he or she goes, I think it's she says somewhere in here that I get the feminine, but she mentions one of the points that he makes, which is another wasting of your time. So she takes issue with that, and She has a personal connection to it. I think this might be better as a brief discussion board post or conclusion paragraph at the end of one of these other sort of analytical essays.